Welcome to the Explainer. Listen, if you're on the path to the Australian bar, there are some cases that are more than just cases. They're practically part of your legal DNA. And today, we're diving into one of the absolute giants, Bunning v. Cross. Think of this less as a history lesson and more as the playbook for one of the most critical arguments you'll ever make in court. So, let's just get right to it. Here's the big, messy question. If the police break the law to prove someone else broke the law, what are you supposed to do? What does a court do with that? This is the fundamental dilemma that Bunning v. Cross forces us all to wrestle with. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to look at the simple facts that started it all, follow the case on its absolutely chaotic journey through the courts, and then really unpack the High Court's genius balancing act. Finally, we'll nail down exactly what the Bunning discretion is and why, for you, this principle is something you're going to use for your entire career. So where did it all begin? Well, like a lot of these landmark cases, it started with something that happens every single day. We're on a highway in Perth, all the way back in 1975, and a guy named Bunning gets pulled over for speeding. Simple enough, right? Now, on the face of it, this all seems pretty routine. Cop smells booze, driver stumbles, this is all pointing in one direction. But look at that very last point. That little detail about no preliminary roadside test, well, that's not just a minor slip-up. That's the legal tripwire that's about to blow this whole case wide open. And then came the breathalyser result, which was frankly a bombshell. 0.190. We're talking more than double the legal limit. You can just imagine the prosecutor, right? This is a dream. The evidence is so powerful, what we call highly cogent in the biz. It feels like an absolute open and shut case. But, and this is a huge but, here's the problem. That procedural shortcut the officer took, it wasn't just sloppy, it was unlawful. Under the act at the time, he had no right to demand that breathalyser test without doing the roadside one first. So the single strongest piece of evidence was obtained illegally. Okay, so you can see the problem. One tiny procedural error has just poisoned the best piece of evidence. And what followed was this incredible legal tug-of-war, with the case literally bouncing up and down the court system because nobody could agree on what to do next. Just look at this timeline. It's absolute chaos. First, the evidence is out. Then a higher court says, no, it's in. But a judge can kick it out. So the judge kicks it out again. Then an even higher court says that decision was wrong. This constant back and forth showed that the system was crying out for a clear, definitive rule from the very top. And that's exactly why the High Court had to step in. You see, this stopped being about Mr. Bunning pretty quickly. The whole justice system was kind of gridlocked on this huge question. Do you let a clearly guilty person walk free just to send a message to the police? Or do you accept the evidence to get the conviction and, in doing so, maybe encourage police to cut corners in the future? There was just no easy answer. And this is where the High Court showed its wisdom. They didn't just give a simple, yes, it's in, or no, it's out. Instead, they created this incredibly elegant, sophisticated balancing act, a framework that has shaped Australian law ever since. At its heart, the court put two massive public interests on a scale. In one tray, you've got the very real need to convict people who break the law and keep the community safe. But in the other tray, you have something just as important, the principle that our authorities have to play by the rules, and that people need protection from illegal state action. The whole decision is about finding that sweet spot, that perfect balance. You know, to really frame their thinking, the court reached back to this incredible quote from the 1800s. It's this deep idea that getting to the truth, in this case the truth of Bunning's intoxication, isn't the only goal. Sometimes the way you get there can do more damage to the system than the crime itself. The price of that conviction might just be too high. So this balancing act got a name. It was formalized into what every single Australian barrister knows as the Bunning discretion. And you need to think of this as the essential toolkit you'll reach for anytime you're dealing with evidence that's been obtained improperly. So what is it, really? Well, it's this incredible power that a judge has to look at a piece of perfectly solid, reliable evidence and say, you know what, I'm not going to allow it. Not because it's wrong, but because the way it was collected would do more damage to the public's trust in the justice system than letting it in. Okay, for anyone studying for the bar, you need to live and breathe these 5 factors. This is the battleground. If you're a defense, you're arguing that police conduct was a reckless disregard for the law. If you're prosecution, you're saying it was just an honest mistake. Every single one of these points is a lever you can and will pull in court to persuade a judge. So let's see how the High Court actually used this test in Bunning's case. They figured the cop made an honest mistake, the evidence was rock solid, and drunk driving is obviously serious. All those things pointed to letting the evidence in. But on the flip side, it would have been incredibly easy for the cop to just follow the law, and that law was clearly there to protect people. In the end, though, the High Court weighed it all up and decided that the factors for admitting the evidence were just a bit stronger. So we've been talking about a case from the 70s. You might be thinking, why is this so critical for me right now as I'm preparing for the bar? Let me be clear. Mastering Bunning is completely non-negotiable. This is way bigger than just passing an exam. It's about understanding the fundamental line between the power of the state and the rights of a citizen. And when you're in practice, you are going to be the person at the bar table arguing about exactly where that line should be drawn. Okay, for your bar exams, this slide right here is pure gold. You need to burn these points into your brain. Remember, illegal evidence is not automatically out. It's a fight about public policy. Your job is to know these 5 factors inside and out so you can stand up in court and argue them from either side of the case. And if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. The Bunning discretion is basically how our courts police the police. It's the system's way of saying we will not endorse or encourage illegal behavior from law enforcement because the integrity of the whole system is what's truly at stake. In the end, Bunning versus Cross doesn't give us a simple formula. What it gives us is this powerful, enduring question. It hands you, the future barrister, the framework and the profound responsibility to ask in every single one of your cases, justice at what cost? And that will be your job to argue.